Making a fashion statement by adopting the left's trendiest new accessory, a tinfoil hat. While taking questions at a tech conference in California today, Clinton dismissed the scandal over her private email server as a non-issue of zero importance.
My email account was turned into, the biggest scandal since Lord knows when. This was the biggest nothing burger ever. It was a mistake. I've said it was a mistake. And obviously, if I got to turn the clock back, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. But the way that it was used was very damaging.
It meant nothing. It was totally irrelevant, which does raise the question, if it didn't mean anything, why did it hurt her campaign so much? She had an explanation for that, too. She said because the right-wingers in the media, the Washington Post and the New York Times, wouldn't let it go.
I know you had Dean Baquet here from the New York Times yesterday, and they covered it like it was Pearl Harbor. And then in their endorsement of me, they said, this email thing, it's like a help desk issue. So it was always a hard issue to put to bed, but we put it to bed in July, and then it rose up again.
Okay, so the New York Times is biased against Democrats. A novel defense, you say? Oh, but it got weirder from there, a lot weirder. Hillary went on to deliver a narrative so complex we could barely follow it, but we did. She explained how Donald Trump and Russia teamed up to rob her of her rightful job as President of the United States.
How did they know what messages to deliver? Who told them? Who told them?
Yeah.
Who were they coordinating with or colluding with? There's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites. The Russians, in my opinion, and based on the intel and counter-intel people I've talked to, could not have known how best to weaponize that information unless they had been guided. And here's
guided by Americans.
Guided by Americans. Within 1 hour of the Access Hollywood tapes being leaked, within 1 hour, the Russians, let's say WikiLeaks, same thing, dumped the John Podesta emails.
Oh, the Russians, but not just the Russians, the guys in Macedonia. So here's what Hillary Clinton is asking you to believe. Her campaign had no message or economic agenda or really any idea what voters wanted in the last election. But that didn't matter, none of it. They were going to win anyway. It was guaranteed by God himself. Then, at the last minute, the Trump campaign, which had half the money Hillary had, almost no staff or institutional support from anybody, came up with the diabolical idea to reach out directly to the government of Vladimir Putin and his army of bloggers and hackers and request emergency help. Putin complied, of course, because Trump was his puppet, perhaps even a secret agent of the Kremlin working directly for him. What happened next is history, or as Hillary herself might put it, her story. Unnamed members of Trump's campaign asked Russia to hack the DNC and the personal Gmail account of Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta, having deduced this must be the best way to hurt her in the campaign. The emails they exposed found a cushy relationship between the media and the Democratic Party. They showed evidence the Democratic primary process was rigged in Clinton's favor. They exposed Wall Street speech transcripts Clinton wanted to keep secret. The Trump people imagined all of this would be enough to win, but not so. In fact, Hillary explained today the emails the Russian hacked were boring and contained nothing of note, nothing worth knowing. So to increase the potency of this scheme, the Trump campaign ordered Russia to manufacture something called fake news out of the emails and distribute them through their network of bogus news outlets, which, by the way, they have. You probably didn't know that. Now researchers at Stanford have actually discovered that the fake news Hillary refers to was seen by almost nobody and believed by even fewer people. But according to Hillary, it was enough in the end to bamboozle the sad and easily confused voters of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin into mistakenly voting for Donald Trump. And by the way, she feels sorry for them for doing that. According to Hillary, the Trump campaign was so intimately tied to the vast Russian propaganda apparatus that they dictated the release of John Podesta's emails down to the minute in order to achieve maximum effect. They were apparently successful in this, even though, according to Hillary, nothing bad was in the emails in the first place, and they should have had no effect at all. Is that diabolical enough for you? Now, keep in mind that Hillary confidently asserted all of this today while providing precisely no evidence that any of it ever happened. A conspiracy so vast, she doesn't need to prove it. Now, no matter how much you may dislike Hillary Clinton, and some of you may, it was a poignant performance to watch. You almost wanted to help her.
It depends on what she did with the information that she unmasked. She is entitled to this. She, as the president's national security advisor, has the highest level of national security clearance. So if General Flynn is talking to the Russian ambassador and that conversation is recorded, is surveilled, because the government wants to know what the Russian ambassador is saying to whomever he's speaking, and she needs to know to whom the ambassador was speaking in order to understand the conversation, she can do that. Can she reveal the identity of the American for a purpose other than national security? Absolutely not. Can she ask for more Americans involved and then unmask them and say to her boss, by the way, guess what Trump and Manafort were talking about last night? You know what that's called? That's called espionage. That's called the failure to safeguard top secret information. The identity of Americans incidentally caught up in otherwise lawful surveillance is protected by the top secret protection, the highest level of classification of secrets that we have. This is the same crime that Hillary Clinton probably committed by her failure to safeguard top secret information when she was Secretary of State.
This is very troubling, because if you use the apparatus of the intel community to do something bad to your political opponents or to surveil them for political advantage, that is everything that FISA was not supposed to be.
Correct. It's also hacking and it's espionage. Each time it's done. So the FBI must examine this, and she must be challenged as to why she needed this information and what she did with it. She only had one boss. She only reported to one person. We all know who that was. That was the President of the United States.
Right, and reportedly, a lot of these conversations had nothing to do, or actually none of the stuff somebody saw, according to sources in the press today, had to do with Russia. So there's no national security interest.
If there's no national security involvement, then she has no right to examine it, and she has no right to reveal it, even if the revelation is not in public.
Judge, don't you
even
know
if the
she couldn't
revelation
get away
is in
with
private.
this, though, right? She can always say she did have a national security interest because they were checking to see if he was colluding with Russia.
You know,
that's all she has to say, and she gets away with it, right?
Well, no. She can say what she wants, but the FBI, when they're investigating this, should challenge her as to whether or not what she's saying is true.
Right.
Think about what happened. The President of the United States and his national security advisor were obtaining transcripts of the President-elect and his potential national security advisor and other transcripts. Could you imagine if George W. Bush and Condoleezza Rice had done this to President-elect Obama? The political earthquake would still be palpable.
And now maybe we know what Trump was talking about in that tweet.
I think we do.
Maybe some Democrats will come out against this.
Mission removed Assad's chemical weapons.
Even the Washington Post fact-checkers giving her statement, yes, 4 Pinocchios.
So, does this further prove her willingness to fib, and could it add to her legal problems? Let's talk to Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. She is a serial fibber.
Well, she is. She's a public liar. We know that because of the lies she told about Benghazi, the infamous 5 Sunday morning talk shows where she lied about the basis for it. She lied about surveilling Mr. and President-elect Trump and unmasking him and others. And, of course, she eventually admitted. And now she's got a newspaper very supportive of her former boss, the Washington Post, saying she lied about Syria and chemical weapons. How could this bite her? Well, she's probably going to testify before 1 or 2 committees. Let's take the House committee, where there is a notorious, he'll like me calling him this, attack dog, former U.S. attorney, now Congressman Trey Gowdy, who really knows how to cross-examine. And one way you cross-examine is by showing how the witness lied in other instances, and they said, were you lying then or are you lying now? And that is what is going to happen to her. So, simply stated, her credibility is shot before she even takes the oath and says a word.
Will it just be a public embarrassment for her? Because we've seen Trey Gowdy grill people. Or will it be, will something more serious happen?
Will there be legal consequences?
Yeah.
That is a great question. Unfortunately, the government is allowed to lie to us, even though we, ask Roger Clemens or
Sammy Sosa and McGuire.
Exactly. Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
We could be prosecuted for lying to them. But there's another crime whereby you can actually tell the truth but still be convicted of misleading if the answer, though technically correct, is misleading. And that's called misleading Congress. And they're probably going to try and trap her into that. Would she be prosecuted? I think so. I think the Trump administration is so furious at what she did. that they will lay a trap for her, and we'll see if she falls into it.
Right, because where the Pinocchios are coming from, TV talk shows and whatnot, she did interviews where she misled.
Yes.
They'd have to get her under oath, is your point, with Trey Gowdy, and actually ask her specific questions about surveillance and other matters and see if she tells the truth then.
In the Roger Clemens case, they forgot to administer the oath, which is why he was not prosecuted. He's eventually acquitted, and I'm a big fan, as you know.
Yes.
Not as big a fan as I am of 42 Faith, but I'm a big fan of Roger Clemens. So he was not prosecuted for lying under oath, but for misleading. But if you are under oath, as I'm sure she will be, then there's two potential crimes: lying under oath or misleading. But she has a track record of misleading, serious public misleading. I wouldn't be surprised if Congressman Gowdy and his colleagues come up with a few other instances on which to examine her.
We're going to have you back. We want you to talk about United Airlines maybe next time.
I have some very strong opinions about it.
We all
So
do.
does everyone.
10 minutes more to him.
Thank you.